Good morning and welcome to Google for Education, Education on Air, bringing the maker movement to your classroom. My name's Adam Hamilton and I'll be moderating this presentation for our host, Tanya Ducey. Tanya is the assistant professor for instructional technology at University of Wyoming. Give you a little bit more about Tanya's background. Tanya has a bachelor's and master's in agricultural education from Texas A&M University and her PhD in learning, design, and technology from the University of Georgia. She is also the founder of the WyoMakers makerspace at UW and currently assisting the UW College of Engineering with designing and establishing a student innovation center. Proud to say I got to meet Tanya and our other special guest, Alicia Brooks, at the Google Teacher Academy in Austin, Texas this past December. And these are two of the most amazing educators I've had the opportunity to ever meet. So Tanya, with that, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Adam. It is my pleasure to join you all today for bringing the maker movement to your classroom. To give you some background about the other folks joining me this morning, you met Adam a little bit ago, and Adam is the Dean of Applied Sciences at St. John Vianney High School in St. Louis, Missouri. He's also a biology teacher, and as he mentioned, a Google certified teacher. Joining us as a special guest to give us the teacher and administrator perspective and to help ask me questions that will likely be of interest to the audience is Alicia Brooks. She is the instructional technology coach for Barbers Hill ISD down in Texas. My heart is always in Texas, Alicia.
Yay! Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
And as you can see, Alicia is joining us from her car. That's the beauty of technology and Google Hangouts, especially Hangouts on Air. She was watching her daughter play basketball this morning.
Yes. I'm lucky that we're able to do this online anywhere. That's what I love about Google Hangouts.
So one thing I want to mention as we get started this morning with bringing the maker movement is that Adams High School is a GAF, a Google Apps for EDU school, and Alicia's school has implemented Chromebooks and Nexus tablets for pre-K, there we go, that's the right word, pre-K through 12, and that will come in handy later as we talk about how can you be a maker. So to get started, I've got some videos because the number one question I get asked is what is a makerspace and what is making? So let's take a look at one quick video that has a view of what making and makerspaces are. So Alicia, did that video give you any ideas or questions? Or Adam, for that matter.
I guess my first question to you would be, when it comes to maker spaces, why are we doing this? What's the motivation here with our kids? How do we sell this as why we do it?
That is a fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked it, Adam. When it comes to making, it's about empowerment. And I know that we've all run into little projects throughout life that have created successes. So something when it comes to making that I talk about with others is that many of us, especially if we're in our mid to late 30s, 40s, and even older, we encountered making all along our educational careers. Did you ever make slime or peanut brittle in chemistry class?
Making those things is part of the fun. It's what got me into science to begin with, seeing what I could do.
And that is the core of my point. When we do those activities, it gets students engaged and interested. It taps into what we call individual interest and situational interest. But what making as a movement has done has empowered students to take those individual activities and go a step further, to take it to the next level, and to get interdisciplinary, so that you're no longer just working on making something in a chemistry classroom or in a shop class in a vacuum, but you're reaching across subject areas, so that essentially you're taking those connections and drawing the lines so that the dots for the students get connected. That yes, what I'm working on is related to building something, but how much math goes into making a birdhouse? It's incredible. Now, when we expand that into digital tools, which makerspaces have truly allowed us to do, the world just opens up immensely. So you start getting into playing with programming and robotics and circuits. The more that I work on maker activities with students, the more I think, man, why didn't we have this when I was in school? I might have taken a different path. So let's take a look at what Tinker Nation has to say about makerspaces.
Tanya, I just wanted to hop in and tell you.
Looks like we've had some video playback issues, and I do apologize for that. So let me see if I can at least share these resources with everyone. And make those available in our chat. So we will work on getting that to happen as well. Thank you for letting us know, Mr. T. So for those of you who weren't able to see these videos, I do apologize. Were you able to hear the audio at least? Adam, Alicia, can you chime in?
We did not. At least I did not, no.
Okay. How about the first video? Was it playable?
It was not.
Ah, unfortunate. I do apologize. Those are frustrating. So if you want to search for these videos on YouTube, Makerspaces, What is a Makerspace? Is by Liquid Wrench, was the second video I played. And then What is a Makerspace by XBleTM. That was the first video that we played. These are short videos. The first one's only a minute long. The second video is 3 minutes long. But it talks about exactly what is a makerspace. To kind of recap and give you some information, makerspaces are where you come together with a community. It's a very social activity. So what do I mean by social activity? Well, let's say that you want to learn how to do something. Do you want to learn how to program an app? Do you want to learn how to build a circuit? Do you want to build a race car or a robot? In a makerspace, you are able to come together in a safe environment and put those resources together and make that what you work on. You can get feedback from a person in this makerspace if you're able to have the community and have the individuals with that expertise, or even better, you can connect with makerspaces around the world. It is a global movement. Maker fairs, we have mini maker fairs all over the United States. In fact, the Wyoming Mini Maker Fair is coming up at the end of May, and it will be up in Jackson, Wyoming, hosted by the Teton Science School. If you find yourself on the west coast of the United States, the flagship Maker Fair for the Bay Area is coming up this weekend. So that's a great place to go and get some ideas if you're able to. I know that some of those sessions and ideas are also featured online through videos. So if you don't have the expertise in your school, in your community, you can connect with makers from around the world to find out what are they doing and how are they doing it, and is there someone that you can bring in through a Hangout, through a Skype chat, or bring in physically if you can, and actually have them help you learn how to do something or help your students learn how to do something. Now, something I want you to keep in mind is that maker spaces don't have to start with a full-fledged maker space. They can start in a classroom. So I want to share with you some resources that I've put together. So on screen, theoretically, you should be seeing an article from Make Magazine, Stocking Up School Maker Spaces. Since we had some technical issues.
We can see it.
Awesome. Thank you,
We
Adam.
can see that.
Thanks, Alicia. This is a great entry from Make Magazine. As you can see, it came out almost 2 summers ago, but I referenced schools to it all the time. The short answer to creating a makerspace is there is no magic list. It'd be nice if I could say, hey, you want to create a makerspace? This is what you should get. Unfortunately, I can't do that. It's not realistic because you're going to have different needs for your school, for your community. You'll have a different emphasis. Perhaps you have a wood shop that you're trying to convert into a makerspace. In that case, it makes sense to start with some of those hand tool, woodworking, or even building types of maker activities. Or if you find yourself in a position like Adam or Alicia where you have Google Apps for EDU, which means you have Google Drive for your students, you have Chromebooks, you have Nexus tablets, you can start making digitally. And that's what's fantastic about the makerspace movement and the maker movement. You can start off by building physical objects and applying math and science to creating a bridge, if you will. Or you can get into comic book making or digital storytelling in the 10 o'clock hour if you're in the mountain time zone. So in the previous group of sessions, there was a fantastic session from Mike Petty. He's the IT coordinator for Lakeville Schools, and his session was on comics and creativity with Google Tools. It's amazing what's out there digitally. So if you have those tablets in your school, you already have the ability to have a makerspace. And that may not be something you thought about before. Had that occurred to you, Alicia?
No, and my brain is like spinning now after all these things that you're saying.
It's such an exciting topic for me, and it's hard for me not to get excited about it. You have the tools.
I do have a question for both Tanya and Alicia. So my school's in a position where we have the technology to begin to do this, and as a science teacher, I love the idea of having our kids build and do, because to me, that's what science education should be. What are some of the problems I'm going to face when I bring this to my department, my administration? You know, I know cost would be one, but as Tanya just pointed out, we have the digital tools already to do this. What are some of the other things I'm going to face when I bring this to them?
something you're going to face from a digital standpoint, if you are working on digital storytelling or comic books or some other media creation, is this fantastic concept we have of digital citizenship, digital literacy, and media literacy, appropriate use of digital materials. So you're going to face copyright issues. Have you ever created something, put it on YouTube, and then suddenly your video was muted a few days later? It's a blessing and a curse to have access to all of this information and songs and pictures. But we have to be very aware of copyright restrictions, especially in the United States. And I, as a faculty member for the University of Wyoming, I teach students from around the world. So, for example, I have an American student who teaches in Japan. So when he participates in my classes and we talk about copyright, he has a completely different perspective. He knows what copyright law is like in America, but he's living in the Japanese context, and copyright's just not the same. It's not the same issue that we make it. So as American educators, we have to think about, oh yeah, create this digital story, but know that Google has made arrangements for copyright and rights usage and playback with a lot of recording companies and artists, and that will affect the outcome. Now, if you go with a more physical makerspace where you have a 3D printer, we do have one with the WYO Makers Makerspace here on campus. I love our 3D printer. We've had some fun with it so far. A graduate student in computer science here used it to create a shell casing that contained a Raspberry Pi computer, a motion sensor, a hub to control everything, and indicator lights, and then mounted on the top that could rotate was a camera. She also built a mobile app to control that camera by Wi-Fi because they had a Wi-Fi Bluetooth adapter inside of it. They printed the case and the mechanism to rotate the camera on my 3D printer. It was such a fantastic project to be a part of. However, before they got started, training on safety is a #1 element. If you've ever had a wood shop in your school, then you know that safety is important. Personally, I have burned myself on the 3D printer. You don't want to touch your arm to that 215 degrees Celsius extruder nozzle. It will blister. And when you're using a putty knife or some other tool to get the object off the glass plate, you can and will slice your finger with that putty knife. So safety training is a big one, and that's a liability that a lot of schools have to think about. But when you think about how many times we've had schools with these shops, it's not a foreign idea. I've actually received a recent recommendation from a colleague in the field that if the school district wanted to pay the $100 for one person in the district to become OSHA certified, they could be the OSHA inspector for your makerspace and help make sure that you have safety regulations in place.
I guess as a follow-up question to both of you, it seems like this is an opportunity to really do cross-curriculum work, really start to combine, and I know I'm using educational buzzwords here, but you combine the ability to tell stories with science and engineering. Do either of you have projects or something you've seen that really just did that, cross-curriculum, and just ignited the kids?
That's a fantastic question, Adam, and this is where I can promote what's happening for me later today. Here at the University of Wyoming, our Department of Family and Consumer Science is hosting their 2nd annual fashion show at the Union on campus. This fashion show brings together designers of both clothing and accessories from all across campus. It doesn't have to be in the textiles program. However, they're featuring a project that I worked on through our makerspace. This last semester, this spring semester in the 3rd quarter, I led a design elective with junior high girls, and we talked about what it means to design in 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional. What does it look like when you take a 2-dimensional design and wrap it onto something else? The whole purpose of that elective was to prepare them to hand draw some sort of design. We had girls who drew concentric circles, who went with a rose with a skull in the middle of it. I then worked with one of our faculty members, Dr. Erin Eyrich, in Family and Consumer Science in the Textiles and Merchandising program. She scanned those in, replicated them in the software, and printed them, wait for this one, on a fabric printer. How cool is that? I didn't know those existed.
Even the football coach in me is impressed by that. It would allow, in my situation, it would allow my kids who are really into design at my school, and they do it all the time using Photoshop to make new uniforms for our school. We could actually then turn around and do prototypes. That's really neat. I see we have a question that popped up from Mr. T. Which 3D printer do you have, Tanya?
We have the MakerBot Replicator 5th Gen. I love to talk about my MakerBot. My MakerBot and I are friends. I took MakerBot for a road trip last weekend. He got to go to Rock Springs, Wyoming for the YTech conference with K-12 educators around the state, and we used it for demos and discussions about how schools and teachers could use 3D printers in different projects. I had a geography teacher stop by, and we talked about wouldn't it be great if students could design topographical maps of their state, split it into a puzzle, print the pieces, and then build together your state as a topographical map. So now we got geology involved, we've got math, we've got geography. It's fantastic.
So I have a question. What do you suggest, or how do you suggest for us to get our teachers to kind of open up and not be so afraid to let their teacher or their students come to the Maker Lab during their class, and kind of let go of some of that control that they have? What kind of suggestions do you have to get them to open up to that?
Sometimes it's a matter of trying to find like-minded individuals and advocates in your school so that you can have these informal conversations to share stories, because storytelling is powerful. So when you're able to share successes from other schools or what's happening with another school, it may not happen right then, but you can plant the seed for something to develop. One of my favorite applications of having students from one class make use of a Fab Lab or a makerspace comes from Jackson Hole High School. And Mrs. Sammy Smith is the director for their industrial arts up there, and she created the Jackson Hole Fab Lab. She worked with all of the teachers in the school and asked them, so what are your projects for the year? What are you planning? To see how could they make use of her space. Because while the industrial arts students were in this space all the time, what about the other students? She was able, and this is my favorite, to get the English teacher on board before some of the others. And I always get funny looks when I tell this story. She got the English teacher on board after a unit on Greek mythology and tragedy and literature. And one of the students, if you've ever seen the classic Clash of the Titans film, wanted to create a Perseus statue because that was one of his favorite stories. So he spent weeks prototyping, designing, printing, no, that's not the right size, or the features didn't come out right, or the leg is wrong. Tweak it in the design software, print it again. And it took him a number of iterations, but by the time he was done, it was a tremendous exercise in language arts and math and everything. Because he also had to think about which printer am I going to use, which material is going to be better. Because when it comes to 3D printers, you have the PLA plastic, the ABS plastic, there's metal, there's carbon fiber, there's all kinds. But he had to work through all sorts of individual problems to get to this finished statue to turn in for some sort of representation of his English project.
I think that's one of the things that, as somebody who's sort of new to this makerspace idea, that appeals to me, is as an educator, the one thing I want my students to come away from is that failure is actually a good thing under the right circumstances. The process of, when we were at Google Teacher Academy, the idea of design thinking, prototype thinking, that I want you to make mistakes in a good way, in a controlled way. Because even as a teacher, and you both know this as well as I do, we can come up with a great lesson that absolutely blows up in our faces in real life. But that process of prototype, trial and error, reflection, revision, which coincidentally, if you couch it in different terms, is nothing more than the scientific method, but no science nerddom there. Problem solving is the one thing I don't think that we teach enough of, that frankly faces every adult across every platform. I even use in my example, I say I'm a football coach. I have the scientific method every day. I come up with practice plans, I watch film, I try it out, it doesn't work, I gather data, I remake it. And so the makerspace idea really seems to hit on the process of learning more so than the content-specific mastery. And that, am I getting this right? Is this sort of the idea behind the makerspace?
It really is. It's a place where you can come together, cross-curricular, fail forward. If we can teach our students that it's okay to fail forward, If you fail, take that, learn from it, and turn it into a success. It's a huge motivation factor for students. If you're looking at ways to convince your administration, you have to have the idea first. So you know that you want to work on, and this is where I can talk about the applied math standards from Common Core. I worked on a grant proposal where we were looking at the modeling aspect, where you model certain behaviors, and that was one of the key applied standards that we were focusing on. So if you keep that in mind and you design your activities, you're probably doing something in your lesson plans already that are related to making. Now it's just a matter of reaching out across curriculum, connect with other teachers, create a project that will span an entire unit. And then I almost guarantee you can take some standard. I don't care if it's Next Gen Science standards, Common Core state standards, some other standard. You can map it back to that activity. And if you find yourself, this is for anyone watching this video at any time, if you find yourself in that position and you're struggling with how to map it back to a standard, that's a puzzle I love to solve. Please contact me. I'll help you figure out which standard this maps to.
I have one more statement, and this is just a statement from listening to all this and reading up on your resources. I, always thought of makerspace as almost being as a separate entity, maybe after school activity type thing, but I really like how you're pushing it to be a cross-curricular. I think that's going to help me as an instructional tech to open up maybe a Maker Lab just in the high school where teachers know that, hey, we have a project, this is what you have to prove to me, but you can go to that Maker Lab and make what you want and to prove the learning that you've gotten. So I really like that idea. I think that's going to help me a lot on getting one started and convincing my admin and the teachers the importance of it.
That is a great point, Alicia. This doesn't have to be some massive standalone lab. You don't have to go after a $50,000 grant to make this happen. Start small. Find advocates in your building, in your district. Reach out across districts. That's something that I know that we as Google certified teachers have been fortunate to do. Now that we have a cohort and then we have a broader community of the other GCTs out there, it's a fantastic resource. So for those of you tuning in, reach out to your state ed chats. Find out what other schools are doing and connect with those teachers. And you may find that suddenly you're doing maker activities with other schools. So from our audience, I see that we've got quite a few viewers, so thank you very much for tuning in. We've got about 3 minutes left in our session, so let us know what questions you have specific to your context, to makerspaces in general. How can we help you bring the makers movement into your schools and classrooms? If you're looking at the session details through Google EDU on Air, you should have a link to additional resources. I have compiled a number of resources that are my favorites. So the Makerspace Beta Sampler Cookbook is a fantastic resource. It actually gives you, in cookbook style, the ingredients you need to do certain activities. Everything from using a makey-makey to using paper for engineering projects. I love that one. The Makerspace Playbook from makerspace.com is a fantastic resource. Again, all kinds of activities and details that you can use to get started making in your schools. Everything from safety, #1 rule, to the tools and materials. Instructables.com has a fantastic catalog of activities that you can implement in your schools. I'm not sure how I feel about bacon marshmallows, but I'll give it a try. Bacon is beet candy.
And I like marshmallows, but that's a combo I don't know if I can get behind.
I know. I'm a little concerned about that one. The PBS Kids Design Squad is another fantastic website to check out. And then if you're looking at how to explain makerspaces to your school, to your teachers, to your administrators, EDUCAUSE created, it's more of a post-secondary type of setting, but when I've read through the scenario they give, it's the same kind of scenarios you can envision in high schools and in some junior highs. But it gives you 7 tips about what makerspaces are that you might be able to use when you try to explain this to the other teachers and administrators. So any other questions? Alicia, Adam?
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you, Tanya. I learned a lot. This is something that we hope to move toward at my school, but I didn't know where to start. So thank you for inviting me to this.
Thank you
Yes,
both
thank
for
you.
helping me. I have one last thought to share, and that is makerspaces can be big or small. Just remember that yours doesn't have to have it all.
Great
So with
job.
that, have a great day. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of Google EDU on Air.
Have a great day, folks.